Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I was caught on this when we kind of spoke a little bit. Not everybody knows who we are, so I'll give an introduction. I'm Justin Brickey. This is Jillian. We serve in Spain. We have they're not so little anymore. We have 4 children. They're across the way in Sunday school. And we've been in Spain almost 2 years. We're approaching our 2-year anniversary. We'll be there next week. No, not next week. It's the 21st, so very soon. But that's kind of where we are. Before we get started, I know this is the missions class, so we like to talk about world missions, and we're here specifically with World Witness. One thing, though, before I get started, I want to ask a question, then we'll read a psalm. Why do we do missions? Why do we do it? So think about what are the motivations for you coming to this class to hear about what's going on in the world, and why do missionaries go and do what they do where they do it? So just kind of think through what are some motivations that you think of. And then we're going to read Psalm 96 to give us a little bit of frame of reference. So Psalm 96 says, "Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless His name. Tell of His salvation from day to day. Declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous works among all the peoples. For great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the peoples are worthless idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him. Strength and beauty are in His sanctuary. Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord glory, due His name. Bring an offering and come into His courts. Worship the Lord in the splendor of His holiness. Tremble before Him, all the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Yes, the Lord is established, or the world is established, it shall never be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Let the heavens be glad, and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar, and all that fills it. Let the field exult, and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for He comes. For He comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness, and the peoples in His faithfulness." So as you read through this psalm, there's this idea that the Lord is worthy to be praised, and we are to ascribe Him glory. So when we think about doing missions, a lot of times we simply think about missions, if we have a kind of a limited understanding of missions, a lot of the times it's because people are dying and going to hell. And yes, that is one of the driving motivations for missions. But the other driving motivation for missions is that our Lord is worthy to be praised. We are to ascribe Him glory, and it should be our desire not just to see people not go to hell, but it should be our desire to see the Lord God proclaimed, worshiped, glorified among every single nation in the world, because He is worthy. So that is kind of our 2 motivations as we think about this. As we meet people, we know they are lost. As we come to people kind of from atheists and people who are disenchanted with religion and these things, we say, oh, they're dying, they're lost. And at the same time, we say, our Lord is worthy to be praised among these people, and they must know that, and He must receive the glory through what we're doing and throughout the world. So those are our motivations as we think through missions on the big picture. But for us specifically, we're serving with World Witness, and we're serving in Spain. So as our desire is to see the Lord glorified throughout Spain, throughout the world, World Witness has sent, at this point we have 4 families in Spain in 4 different locations. We have Oviedo, which is where we serve. That's about 5.5 hours to Madrid and about 6 hours to Toledo. So we serve in Oviedo. We have the Bonillas and Kings that serve in Madrid. Bonillas serve in more downtown Madrid. The Kings serve in a smaller town called Camarma de Esteruelas. It's just on the sort of outskirts of Madrid. And then we have the Whitties who serve in Toledo. And so you can kind of get an idea of who these folks are. This is our family and our little crew. We have Jeff and Lisa. We have Mark and Natalie. And my calendar tells me that today is Alex Whitty's birthday. So if you want to kind of drop them a little note, I'm sure he would appreciate that. And then we have Juan Carlos and Ruth Bonilla. So these are the 4 families that make up Team Spain for World Witness. And it is our desire to teach, preach, and evangelize so that the Spanish people will come to know the Lord, so that He will be glorified through their lives and through their praises. So, kind of to that effect, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the realities of Spain, the church in Spain, life in Spain, to give you an understanding of what we're facing as we do ministry there. Because Neil asked me not necessarily to focus on the ins and outs of our ministry specifically, but more to paint you a picture of what's going on in Spain. What are we confronting? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? So, Spain, 46.3 million people. 1.6% are evangelicals. Most people would identify as Roman Catholic. Well, I'll just show you this. So, this is kind of the breakdown that the Joshua Project gives us. So most people would identify as Christian, primarily Roman Catholic. Very small percent would say that they are evangelical and they understand that salvation comes through grace alone, through faith alone, through Christ alone, and that there's no there's no merit on your part in salvation. So then you have non-religious, which is growing. It's actually the irreligious group is the fastest growing segment of the religious landscape in Spain. And then you have Islam. So there are more Muslims in Spain than there are evangelical Christians. And then you have a breakdown of smaller religious groups. So this is a big picture, kind of what we face, what it looks like where we are. Yes, sir?
What are ethnic religions?
Well,
That be African type?
Some of it would be African, but some of it you have small, sort of old pagan religions, especially in the north where we are. So it's more diverse than you'd think in some ways. But
so these are like native religions that are pagan?
Sort of. There's a big Celtic influence from the north. So in Galicia, you still have a noticeable sort of Druid presence, like Druid worship and whatnot. That's still a thing. So it's these, because it's an old country, so you have old little pockets of religions, of various different belief systems. But this is a breakdown of kind of what we see. And so I think we're now moving on to challenges. So what we see is, within this landscape, it's our desire not just to see the percentage go up so that we can say we've gained ground, but we do want to gain ground. But we want to see the glories of Jesus Christ proclaimed. We want to see people come to faith, and ultimately we want to see Spain transformed by the gospel. With that being our desire, we do run into some challenges. So this is one of the things people say, well, what is it like in Spain? Because primarily, they say Spain's a Roman Catholic country. How do you address this? What are you doing? So as I thought through some of the challenges that we face, one of the challenges is, if you're doing ministry in Spain or anywhere, you have to know your enemy. So a lot of times when we talk to folks, they say, the Roman Catholic Church is the enemy, and you have to figure out how to combat Catholicism and all its everything. And we say, well, no, the Roman Catholic Church isn't the enemy. This is the enemy that we're confronting is unbelief, because unbelief is the thing that will send them to hell. Unbelief is the thing that robs God of His glory. Is people saying, no, I don't believe it, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So our primary enemy is unbelief in itself. Now, as a part of that, there are factors that play into unbelief, and especially a very rigid form of unbelief that we confront in Spain. And a lot of that has to do with the Roman Catholic Church. And if it plays out in some ways different than how you would think that it would play out here in the United States or even in other countries. So one of the reasons I'm trying to paint a picture here is we see, through our conversations with people, we see that a lot of unbelief, disenchantment with religion, which is why you have this irreligious group that's growing, in addition to being Europe and falling into all of those categories. Spain in particular has had a bad experience with the Roman Catholic Church, which has led to what I would consider a tainted Christian witness among the people. So, and I'll try to give some context to this. Everyone knows that throughout the history of the Western world, Roman Catholicism and Spain, those two things pretty much are associated to be hand in hand. But interesting things began to happen in the 1800s, 1851. Roman Catholicism was declared on an official basis to be the state religion, and once it became a part of this state religion in modern times, the Spanish government was responsible for paying the Roman Catholic clergy, and they were subsidizing the activities of the church, and so there was a tight link being formed between the government and between the Roman Catholic Church. Now, so this happened beginning in 1851. The history goes back further, but it was officially, there was an agreement made in 1851 that solidified these ties in a formal legal fashion. Through the next several decades, you had 1931, which is the establishment of the Second Spanish Republic, which in 1931, the Second Spanish Republic was established, which broke ties and officially established a secular Spanish constitution, which gave expanded religious liberties to other non-Roman Catholic groups. So for a moment, there was a bright light that said, oh, non-Roman Catholics can have liberty within this culture. But if you think back to your early kind of 20th century history, this secular republic that was formed in 1931 didn't last very long, because in 1936 is when Franco came to power. The Spanish Civil War began, and as a result of Franco's policies, which wanted to control things more tightly, wasn't in favor of the religious liberties, the Roman Catholic Church got behind Francisco Franco with full support. Now, what this looked like is after the war ended in 1938 and Franco came to power, Franco gave special privileges to the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church gave Franco special privileges as well. He had the ability to appoint bishops over the Roman Catholic Church in Spain, and mandatory religious instruction became mandatory, from in kind of church attendance to religious instruction within the public schools. So in every single aspect of life within Spain, the government was tightly linked to the Roman Catholic Church with enforcement. So when you think about this, what does it look like if you as a Christian, this is what we say as we talk about Christians, when they come to know the Lord, our heart's desire is to come together with other believers and worship. But what does it do for you if it's not a voluntary coming to worship? It's the government saying you will attend church on this day, and you will receive the instruction that's controlled by the government, and there are penalties if you don't. It changes your attitude towards the church. It changes your attitudes towards belief and faith, and it causes you to question and say, well, what exactly are we doing here? So, kind of through this process, the identity of Spaniards, because of the tight ties between the Spanish government and the Roman Catholic Church, the identity which was strong before was now enforced and enshrined in the government to say that to be Spanish is to be Roman Catholic, because it is the official religion. Now what happens is in 1976, Franco dies. In 1978, a new constitution is written that begins to break the ties to the Roman Catholic government, which allows religious liberty once again. But one of the things, as we talk about the challenges that we face, say all that to say this. The tight links between the Roman Catholic government, or Roman Catholic Church, and the government weren't tolerated anymore once the new government was established in 1978. And as a result, people who had previously identified as Roman Catholic and Spanish, they began to look at the ties between the government and the enforcement, and they said, if I don't have to do that anymore, I'm not going to do that. Because they began to see the ties with the government, the corruption within the church, and they just said, I don't want to have anything else to do with that. So what you run into is you have these first generation folks who have experienced the corruption and the problems with the government, and they say, they have a first-hand knowledge of the troubles that they've gone through. At this point, we're 3 generations, almost 4 generations out, and, well, yeah. So you're getting to the point that those people that were alive in the time of Franco left the church. Their children grew up just not attending church, knowing that mom and dad hated the church and all that happened. And then we're dealing with those people's grandchildren who know that, well, mom and dad didn't like church, we just have never gone, and it doesn't really matter to us. So what this turns into is you have people who view the church and any sort of religious structure with great skepticism. They see it as a means of controlling people. And so as we talk to people, they express their great concerns with church and organized religion. Even among some of the Christians that we know, they express to us concerns with the church as well, which has been one of our challenges that we're working on. So, kind of big picture is there's been a tainted Christian witness, which has caused people to lose any sort of appreciation, esteem for the church. Most people, they may still say they identify as Roman Catholic, but they don't attend Mass. They don't adhere to any of the moral teachings that the Roman Catholic Church espouses. So it's very possible to have someone who identifies as Roman Catholic and as atheist at the same time, because they're Roman Catholic on a cultural level, but not on a faith level. Which is why I say, for us, we are not there to combat Roman Catholicism. We're there to combat unbelief, because you have to get your categories straight as you're talking to people. So the next kind of challenge that as I was thinking about this, it's a misplaced hope. One of the things since the new government was established in 1978 is people have put a lot of their hope in political change as the solution for everything. And this is what we've seen as you've seen this break from the church and people are no longer affiliated with the church. They look to the government to solve all of their problems. And you see this if you follow the news on any of the political parties and kind of uprisings that come in Spain. A lot of it's associated with political parties, and everyone's looking to their political party to come and be the great white knight who comes in and brings a change that causes everyone to live better and have a happy life. And that's kind of where a lot of their focus is. It's really strange as we talk to people on this, because as they've turned to look to secular systems and political change to lift all of society, you look at the kind of the economic growth over the past 30 years, and in a lot of ways you have the crisis from 2008. But Spain used to be one of the poorest countries in Europe, and they have seen remarkable economic success over the past 30 years. So in a lot of the minds of the people, they say, why did we even need the church? All we need is a good political system, and all of society will improve. And the church and all that goes with it is antiquated, irrelevant, unnecessary. So as we talk to people now, we have the people who put their trust in political systems, put their trust in, they're putting not just their trust, but their hope. And it's strange how it plays out, because it's trust in political systems, trust in all of the systems that go with a government that says, we have this, trust us, and everything will turn out well. So for us, there's no value placed on spiritual things. Because when they think about spiritual things, they think about the church as a controlling mechanism, and they say, I don't need that. I'm going to put my trust in other things. So that's one of the challenges that we face on a structural level. The third one kind of gets to where we are on a more regular basis, and that is Protestants and evangelicals in particular are scorned, not trusted, and generally looked down upon. And what this results in is that the church isn't understood very well. The way this plays out is, there are a couple things. As we talk to people about the church and kind of what we're doing, as we say, I'm a evangelical pastor, I'm here to work with the local church, I'm here to talk to people about the good news of Jesus Christ, and they kind of are taken aback at that. The way it plays out is people talk to us about the church and they say, we have experience with the church and we don't want to have any of that. But one of the things that's been interesting is we have a family in our English conversation group. They're atheists, but they have a son now who's on an exchange program in Texas. And it just so happens that the family that their son was placed with for a few months was a Baptist minister. So what this son was able to experience leaving Spain, where the church is not perceived to be beneficial to society as well, he came to an evangelical church where the gospel is proclaimed and lived out. And he's writing back to his parents and talking to them about his experiences with the Christian community here in the United States. And he's writing back and saying, we went to a soup kitchen or a food shelter, and we're collecting food and giving out food to the needy, and we're engaging in the lives of the needy people in our community, and there's a vibrant, happy, joyful community at this church. So the son is talking to his parents, and the parents are talking to us saying, the church that our son describes, we have no understanding of what that is. Because everything that we've encountered here is totally disconnected from what he's describing to us. So through that, we've had conversations to say, well, no, because the church is actually a good thing. Because the church is the result of changed lives through a relationship with God through Christ, which results in community, in love, and in seeking to serve. So that's been interesting to see, the contrast in perspectives on the church. The other aspect is, at the same time, the church itself runs into a lot of confusion, opposition, and it's not received well. I was talking with the two elders at the church where we are on Sunday mornings, and I was telling them that how in the American church it's frequent to have sort of what we'd call pew riders who are more interested in showing the church because it's what's done culturally, and because at some churches, if you have a more affluent church where you have kind of leaders, doctors, lawyers, people will come to church so they can rub elbows. And we were talking about this over coffee, and they said, Justin, what you just described would not work here in Spain. Nobody in Spain would ever join an evangelical church to gain political power or to somehow advance themselves in society. If you identify yourself as an evangelical in Spain, you are actually shooting yourself in the foot in terms of advancement or anything that we have the temptation to think of here, where it's, we're all Christians, we're all let's go to church because it's what we do. That doesn't happen in Spain. So as I'm talking to the elders of this church, they say, everyone that comes to our church on Sunday, it costs them something to come. From relationships with friends, family, everything. Nobody's coming to church because it's just what you do. So they've put this into context, and we've said, so these are some of the challenges that we've confronted on a kind of a structural, big picture level. I know we have a little bit of time. I'm going to ask Jillian to come up and talk about some of the challenges that we faced on more of a personal, intimate level.
Well, in facing all of these, we have this dance that we have to do. I think at times, and I'm going to speak on behalf, Justin actually puts these elements together, but I'm just painting the picture of what we see. I feel like he's conducting an orchestra of needs. You know, sometimes this group needs more, and sometimes this group needs more, and that needs less. I think that's kind of the motion of ministry. And so we have 3 elements where we reach out. So one of the things we've noticed is that Spaniards don't actually entertain much in their homes. And this comes from a couple of things that we suspect, and practical things. Most Spaniards live in apartments. And so to have people into your home, you have these small apartments with little storage. It's just not a lot of space. So mostly families entertain in their own homes. But when you get together, you get out to the cafes and you go to restaurants, and that's where, or you meet up in the park. That's how you socialize in Spain. And so another part of that is that we are only 30 years out from a regime, from a dictator, and people would denounce each other. So this is not something we take lightly. To be allowed into somebody's personal circle and personal life is them opening up to you, where 30 years ago they wouldn't have shared much with each other. They're not going to trust each other. It was this culture of distrust. And so there's that kind of cultural norm that's been established that I don't think they're even aware of, but we're suspecting has stemmed from that era. So we're working with those ideas and respecting that. Okay, so they're not super open to their family circles. We're not going to be invited into their family dinners. Okay, we can do with that. But then we also have this pocket of expats who are from all over Europe, who also but are familiar with socializing in homes. That's a norm throughout other parts of Europe. So we've got this segment of actual Spaniards who don't go to homes. We've got this segment of expats who do go to homes and feel most comfortable there. We've got people who don't want to cross the threshold of a Protestant church because that's another level of commitment. That's like, saying I'm committing here. So we have this whole mix of people, and how do we meet them? And then we have people who want to know more about the gospel, but they won't cross the threshold of a Protestant church. And it's weird to go to somebody's house, but how do you talk about this openly in a cafe? So all of these things is kind of working in concert with what are the individual needs of the people we see right in front of us. So that's where it comes. You just have to get to know people one at a time. And in the former organization where we served, one of their mantras was people are saved people die one at a time, and they are saved one at a time. And so we are just getting to know who we know. We would love to come in there with American programs and just, open those doors of a new building and say, come on in. But the truth is they're not going to. I mean, we need a place to start from. So we have 3 areas right now where we just really are pouring into and growing deeper roots. And we're starting to see fruit from that in those relationships and in the trust that we've been able to form and in the conversations we can have. And that is Sunday mornings we worship with a local church that's already established. Every church in Spain needs strengthening. And so this church has needs that we are uniquely fit to meet. And so I think that's a providential union that we've been able to have. So there we are, crossing the threshold of a church on Sunday mornings with other believers who are also taking that same step of faith. Sunday evenings, we have a Bible study in our home. And these are mostly expats who come, and we have one Spanish family and at the core of our group, and then some kind of periphery folks who are expats who are there just for the year to teach or be students. So we have a good crowd every Sunday. And this is more of a transient group, but they are also the group who's seeking and interested. So Justin's been leaning into a recent door that was opened was to explore the scripture behind the confessions of faith. And so for us, that was a huge step forward in this group that kind of thinks outside of the box, just do house church. Now to be changing their thinking to, okay, let's look at solid doctrine and start talking about, are we a church and what that means? Because we need to get unified in that. So that's crossing our threshold and talking about our personal threshold in our home to talk about scripture things, yet it's not a commitment to crossing the threshold of a Protestant church for those that struggle with that. So I feel like that's a nice another step in that direction. But then again, Spaniards don't cross thresholds of people's homes very easily. That's weird. So we go out to them. We have a weekly English conversation group, and this is secular in nature, but seldom stays there. We've had many spiritual conversations afterwards. They know why we're there, and yet they keep showing up. And they know there's something different about us, and there's something different about what we do. And so we just winsomely share our faith and our life and our conversations. We are open with them. They've been a great help to us and wonderful friends to us. We also, in my heart, I'm hoping, and we've been talking about this, to also reach out in a more overtly evangelical way in a cafe or some public venue. So that's kind of a next step that we're praying for. But I feel like we have these steps of public encounters and non-believers, our home with seeking believers who need to come around doctrine, and then a church that's already established that's now forming their spiritual identity and doctrine, and that Justin's been able to come along the elders and help with. In that, our children have also been participating, and they come with us. And so as a family, we're living out church as central in our lives and being able to show that as an example in our community. And there are other small children with our youngers who are in these works, which is exciting for us. Our older teens are still an element of prayer. Being a teen and being different from the rest of your culture is very isolating. And so I also, in seeing my teens feel isolated in their faith, I also have a vision for the teens in our area who don't have a place to live out faith or even be introduced to faith. So pray that we can have vision for how to meet those needs as well. That's like a forgotten segment of our population. So those are some other needs, but it is like a concert. Like today we can reach this part, and today we can reach this part. I know this part needs to kind of dim down a little bit so we can do this part. Those who are musically inclined might appreciate that. But yeah, that's how we're dancing it out.
So those are some of the challenges that we face, some of the opportunities that we face. And to talk about kind of what's going on throughout the rest of Spain, the Whitties are encountering the same type of work. They are partnering with an existing church in Madrid. There are many more churches in Madrid than there are where we live. As a result of that, they've had a fair amount more success. They have more success on that front. At the same time, they face the same challenges that we face. You can talk with Mark or anyone who has been to Toledo, and all of the challenges that we just said we're dealing with, they're also dealing with. So you have the Whitties are in Toledo. The Bonillas are hoping to see an international church established in Madrid, and they're working to that end. And the Kings are serving with the Evangelical Christian Academy in Camarma. And they are primarily serving kind of missionary kids, but also some Spaniards that are coming to be given high-quality education within a Christian environment, and they're seeing good fruit from that. So those are some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and kind of it's a snapshot of where we are. I hope it's been helpful. So I'll turn it over to Neil for Q&A or whatever y'all want to do.
I really do appreciate the presentation. So this is all new for me, and so it's good to be able to kind of catch up. And thank you for thinking about those of us in the room who are kind of newer on this. In Latin America, we see a lot of resurgence in Africa as well of the prosperity gospel as part of that 1.6%. Do you see that in Spain at all? Do we see that in Europe?
We do see. That's one of the things where we are. Yeah, the prosperity gospel, it's growing. Especially, it's interesting because you have a lot of immigration from Latin America. So I'll speak in broad terms. Generally, a lot of the more immigrant churches bring with it the sort of prosperity gospel. So we've seen that. Where we are in particular, there are no Reformed churches in our province at all. I think the nearest Reformed church is Reformed Baptist Church, 2 or 3 hours from us. So which is why for us, as we think about introducing conversations about Reformed theology. We're beginning to study the Westminster Confession. To even have these conversations for us is exciting, because for us, when we think Reformed, it's not Reformed in the word, it's biblical. So that's kind of how we lead. But yeah, we have seen a fair amount of prosperity, charismatic movement taking root.
And around the discipling affects people's thinking. Yeah.
It does.
Like just your average kind of young professional type family that you just run across Spaniards, what are their felt needs? I mean, like what?
Felt needs.
Is it community? Is it what? I mean,
it's hard to say, because a lot of the folks that we've met have a really strong exterior. So they're not actually sharing much of their felt needs. As we've gotten to know people, they have the same problems that we have. Family struggles, financial struggles, health struggles, all of these things. But it's always been surprising to us as we've had conversations with folks. They'll start to go down that path, and then it kind of breaks off, and they just say, "Animo," like just be encouraged and just buck up and carry on. So as we've started to have those conversations, it frequently just gets cut off and animo, and they go back to more superficial topics. So they're there, but they're not expressing their needs openly.
Does that happen in English club more so than other places?
Right. That's where we'll begin to have the conversation, and let's just stop talking about that. And it's like,
do you ever share your needs with any of the people?
oh yeah, that's been.
Does that surprise them?
I think it's refreshing.
Yeah.
To them, and we're not drippy folks. I mean, we're not going to drip all over them and say, "Oh, my life is so hard." But there are days I feel like being drippy, but I'm not. And no, so we have shared openly, with having to put our kids in school. We shared with them, and they gave us ideas back. And I think that actually, through our struggle and being open, just that we have the struggle, they were able to offer ideas. And in offering us ideas, they turned around and said, "And let's talk about the school. Let's talk about that. I've been wondering about what to do with my children, and this is my concern." So it's like led to us being open, has led to them trusting us more. But that's natural, I think, in any relationship. When you trust somebody and share a little, they share a little back, and it's gotten deeper as time has gone on.
Do you have relationships with the women, like in smaller groups, where the women become more transparent?
I'm getting there. So there's seldom a week that goes by that I don't have a coffee date with somebody, and I sometimes have to say, I just can't today, so it's nothing's centralized yet, but yeah, I've reached a level with several women, both Spaniards and expats, that are just reaching new levels, and they're opening up, so that's been nice.
Have you seen the Lord use any of the particular needs in your own life, like the food allergy stuff and your dad's? I mean, has that been a bridge or a barrier? Or?
Well, I could think Jillian was talking with a friend of hers who's an atheist, and when Jillian, in December, we found out, Dad's been given a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. They hope that with chemo his life can be extended a year, maybe 2, if he responds well. And through that conversation with Jillian, one of her friends, I'll let you tell us your story.
Well, I mean, she's just a tremendous friend, and we have play dates every week, her son with our boys, and but she just is atheist. So when she was asking me about this, she's genuinely concerned about our family, and she said, "How is his father doing with that?" And I said, "He actually has peace. That the Lord is in control, and that he knows that he will see him one day, and that whatever happens between now and that point is in his hands as well." And she just went, "He has peace? Yeah, how can he have peace? How's his mom? Surely his mom is falling apart." No, she also has peace. It's very hard. It's very stressful. We're very concerned, yes. But no, there's this great peace in our family, and we'll figure this out. And that, to her, you could see her, You could just see it come over her. And in me, I was speaking naturally and then realized what I was saying and who I was saying it to, and I just went, okay, well, Lord, just take this conversation. So, yeah.
Do they have a national health system?
They do. We can't access it.
Oh, is that run by the church or not?
What's that?
Is that run by the church?
No, it's run by the government.
Yeah.
Yes.
As people put their hope in political parties, where do they draw their morality or ethics from?
Make it up as they go. From what we've seen, it's because that's one of the things that I was kind of just looking over some of this. So when you think about all of the sort of modern ills that have been legalized and allowed, gay marriage, abortion, drugs, all of that is generally allowed. The only kind of moral indignation that hasn't gained a foothold yet is euthanization. So everything else is fair game. So there is no... So when it comes to where do they get their sense of morality?
Community.
It's community. It is. It's...
The community setting, yeah. I don't know if you've picked up the picture in Spain of where ministry happens more easily and where it's a challenge. It's a challenge with Spaniards. That's just long, slow, hard work.
Right.
But with folks who are from other places, there tends to be a quicker response, more openness. And an example that keeps emerging is with the Whitties, where their desire is to reach Spaniards and they're engaged with Spaniards. But without trying, refugees just keep showing up at their church door.
That's right.
Most recently, some who've had to flee Venezuela
Yeah.
because of the trouble there have showed up at their church door.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating.
But also people from Ukraine
and
and
before
Russia,
that,
because
Ukraine,
isn't Natalie
Natalie's-
now translating the service?
That's right.
And Natalie, who's Ukrainian, gets called in to translate for these families. So anyway, but with that was not their goal, but that's what's happened.
Well, and that's what we've seen is expats are far more open to talking about these things and actually having these conversations.
Well, and they view the church as an oasis. We're expats, and so that's attractive.
They want to find the church.
Yeah,
versus
they want to find
avoid
the church. And the Brits actually in our area have started to express interest in a Protestant church. So we're having more conversations. We've been connected just through relationships to a local British school, and in our own school there are some British and Spaniard blended couples who are interested. So pray for
Is that
those.
a negative for Spaniards, the expat influence? Or
It
is
can
that
be
a-
if
It
it's,
can be.
I'll be honest, there's really strong racism, and so it is if it's Latino. And I'm just stating a fact. It's not something we appreciate. But they're looking, the British folks are looking to worship with Spaniards if they can. So.
It'll be interesting in X number of years, though, for you to look at this in terms of what God has called you to. You know, it may really shift more away from the Spaniards. Who knows?
Well, I think that's how the culture might change, is through the people
Yeah.
coming to it.
Is it different in a smaller town environment? I don't know much about the geography. I'm in Madrid.
Yes. In a smaller town environment, there are very few people who aren't.
There's some real regional pride where you
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it can be a problem.
Okay, so how is the church, the Spaniards who are evangelicals, how do they deal with or handle or work through the fact that they're, closed off, insular, and yet the Bible commands us to share the gospel?
They're balancing it.
They're balancing it.
They see the struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Even I mean, we've seen this in churches where even when visitors come, new people, the insular church is sort of skeptical of, somebody from the outside's coming to our fellowship. How welcoming should we be? And it's strange at the same time if you've been to churches in the United States, you've seen where this same sort of me and my four, no more, who's this outsider coming in? You see it everywhere.
Say that again,
Me and my four and no more, because we have everything that we need within what we have, which makes it very difficult to actually do what you're supposed to do.
But I will say, we should mention that the church where we're serving on the Sunday mornings, the reason why we feel so encouraged and that the Lord is really at work there is because it's a Spaniard who is really burdened for this church. He's leading it. He's the elder in place and feels a burden for reaching this community, which is a unique and wonderful thing, and he's what's attractive to other Spaniards. So we recognize that. So it really is a ministry of invisibility for us. We try to stay behind and strengthen the people in front of us. So, yeah.
Well, why don't we have a couple folks pray for you all as you go back Wednesday? And thank you for